Can Facebook reinvent itself and rehabilitate its tarnished image?
And are Shonky white label cheaper tech products really a bargain or a sucker's bet?
And will Telstra sync the NBN with its 5G home broadband services? Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award winning network and Australian based support. Hi there, welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News. Each week we venture across the recently reopened state borders to catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists and dive into the big tech stories of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as always by Alex Kidman, a man with a keen eye for fashion. So, Alex, this week Samsung announced, well, it's a new foldable, but it's not exactly what we had in mind. These are $1,500 jeans with a special pocket just for a flip phone. Has Samsung lost their minds here?
Look, I should point out for anyone laughing in the background, this is genuinely a real thing that Samsung is
Yeah, I'm not
doing.
making this up. You couldn't
It's
make this up.
it's a $1,500 pair of jeans. Although, to their credit, you do actually get the Galaxy Z Flip 3 phone with it, so it's really kind of $100 pair of jeans or thereabouts. But it's a weird play. It's presumably for people who really love Zorro because they've got big Zs on the front of them. They're the most bizarre looking things. And the whole point of this foldable phone was meant to be, hey, it really easily fits in your pocket because it folds in half. What worries me is that this is going to bring forward a whole new fashion trend, and we'll end up with Apple selling like that iconic, Steve Jobs black skivvy, but with a massive front pocket for a MacBook Pro 16. Although I don't know that the Microsoft fans are going to line up for like a sweaty Steve Ballmer shirt with a Surface stand at the back.
Nobody wants that, but the tactical turtleneck, the Jobs tactical turtleneck, I can see that being a big winner with a certain crowd.
The same people buying that Apple cleaning cloth, right?
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of a certain crowd, we're joined once again in the Vertical Hold virtual studios by Finders Angus Kidman. Gus, what future fashion and tech collaboration would get you to open your wallet?
Well, I think I'd like to embrace my Scottish heritage, and what I would like is a kilt with wireless charging. I think that'd be great.
Nice.
Oh, what happens when the wireless charging goes wrong? I mean, more will be worn under the kilt than usual in that case,
Yeah.
wouldn't
There's a dongle joke in there somewhere, but I'm not touching it.
Yes, you're not touching my dongle. That is correct.
So Gus is putting that aside. Gus is here to talk about Facebook, or shall we say Marky Z's House of Horrors? No, actually, we won't say that because that's not what they decided to call themselves. Instead, Facebook's new big parent company is called Meta. So we're going to dive into its structure and its promises around what it's doing with facial data and a whole lot more. As well as that, the big T is finally getting into fixed 5G broadband, take on the NBN, but how do its deals stack up?
Before we do that, we caught up with Erin Turner from Choice to talk white label tech products, Choice's Shonky Awards, and why sometimes bargain shopping isn't a good use of your money. Welcome back to the virtual Vertical Hold studios, Erin.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So usually on Vertical Hold, we don't talk about fans. They're not a big product category for us.
We've got a few fans, to be honest, but we don't
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about. I like to brag. It's a bit of a flex, you know.
But this week, Choice has made a point of calling out fans supplied by, well, it turns out by a number of Australian tech retailers. What's the story, and why do these fans blow but not in the right way?
Yeah, they suck because they don't blow. Um, look, we found this fan. It just bombed our tests in our choice labs. But what I thought was really interesting about this is that it's not just a terrible fan. It's a terrible fan sold by at least four different retailers that we've found under four different names. It's a theme we're seeing commonly throughout the choice testing process at the moment. Uh, some brands out there are just selling the same crap.
This is nothing new, though. This idea of what is it, white labeling, where someone makes it and then you stick your own label on it. It's been around for a long time, right?
It has, and look, it's probably best known kind of classically in the mattress market. You can go to a lot of different retailers, and the same bed will be sold under a slightly different label, maybe with a slightly different color, but it's essentially the same guts.
Yeah.
Um, I think what's changed here is that a few online retailers have made white labeling a lot more common and easy to do, particularly big websites like Alibaba. You can head on there now and you can buy. I was on there this morning and looking at a smartwatch, a tracker, a fitness tracker I could buy for $2.30-ish per item for a few hundred items, and I could resell that if I wanted to. No idea how good that
Oh,
product is, but
sounds like quality.
you're gonna wonder how good that smartwatch is. But y- there's been a kind of an exponential growth in this, and big businesses are doing it. Individuals are doing it.
I mean, the example here is Kogan. They very much made their name on white labeling TVs at first, and then white labeling just about everything else, including, I believe, this fan.
Yes, this fan. So we found it from Kogan. Um, what's interesting is that it's not sold at a price point that you would assume is crap. But essentially, it's a $20 fan inside a, well, they were selling it for $300, 50% discount, or at least 50% discount, somewhere between 130 and 150. It just doesn't work. But it's also sold basically the same fan in places like Harvey Norman, Catch, the IT Mart. So it's actually, I think what's challenging is it's not easy to identify the knockoff that's being sold, not by price alone and not by brand.
But it's designed to very much look like those bladeless fans you get from high-end brands, which may or may not be good value in themselves, of the likes of your Dysons and so on.
That's exactly it. This is the thing you buy if you want something kind of like a Dyson, but maybe slightly cheaper. In reality, it's even cheaper than the price you're paying for it, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't mean that all white label products are bad. We've actually in our same fan test, we had another white label product. Um, did really, really well. It sold for about $30 in Big W though, and $70 under a Dimplex brand. So you could probably get something great for much cheaper.
So, how many fans did you stack up in this test?
We're constantly we love fans as most people do, but it's something we constantly test. We're often doing batches in a few dozen at a time because this is a market that turns over and changes really quickly. Well, there's some very common Dyson style big brands that don't change as much.
And are you finding that with not just with fans, but all kinds of gadgets these days, that the price tag doesn't necessarily reflect the quality?
Yeah, that's definitely it's something our testers say all the time. Both brand isn't a good consistent indication of quality, and price isn't a good consistent
Then how do you know
indication
what
of
to
quality.
buy? I mean,
Well,
obviously you read choice, but apart apart
if you
from the
don't,
obvious, apart from
Some of the rest of us
subscribing,
write product reviews as well.
yeah. But okay, well, apart from reading reviews, which is I would suggest to anybody is a great idea if
exactly.
you're going to buy anything. Are there any other things that tend to be a good indicator that something is shonky or not so shonky?
Look, I think it's about reviews do matter.
Yeah.
Whether that's consumer reviews are a good start, but sometimes people rate features that it was great when I got it out of the box, or it's only when the very very bad thing happened that I talk about it. So they're often
Mm.
it's two extremes. Expert reviews, whether it's done by any kind of expert, I think is the right starting point. And I actually like friends and family opinions as well. If you can get your hands on a thing, it's usually a good indication that it might be good for you. But it totally depends on the product. Tech's really hard because that's one of those kind of it's a product that you can't see the insides of very easily.
And tech's difficult as well. This is something that I face when I'm writing a product review, and I think Choice takes much the same kind of approach. You've got to consider that a product can also be terrible for what the individual reviewer thinks of or wants or needs, but might brilliantly suit another
Perfect.
person.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It totally. I mean, there's some cases where it's really clear cut, like a fan that doesn't blow. No one wants that. You should not spend $130 on that product. But if it's a product that, maybe it's not right for you, it doesn't have all I have a partner who's very, very techy. He has high requirements, high needs with his tech gear. Whereas I'm usually happy with something that just turns on and does the job. So yeah, every individual is different, particularly with those features.
So it's a bit like movie reviewing. You've got to find reviewers and positions that you agree with as well, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Find the person who thinks a little bit like you is a useful way to think about it. And on some features, if it's bad, it's just bad. If it doesn't turn on, if the battery doesn't last, if it's going to die quickly, look at those features to see if are the basics right.
So, at what point does consumer law kick in here? How much does a fan have to blow before it doesn't suck?
That is such a great question. Look, our advice to someone who may have bought this is consider if the consumer guarantees apply, because I think if the fan doesn't keep you cool, it's not doing its one job. You should get a refund or replacement repair, depends on the scenario. Um, if it does it poorly, sometimes it's borderline. It really comes down to the specific product and price. And that's where the consumer law can be really hard to navigate.
So, what should consumers be looking to do if they are in that situation of a terrible fan or any other terrible tech product in terms of dealing with wherever they got it from? And especially, I guess, for online where it's even harder.
Yeah, exactly. I think particularly if you've bought it through, even say Facebook Marketplace is becoming really common for white label products as more individuals get involved here. It can be hard to navigate. Look, first thing, complaint in writing to the retailer. Um, say what the problem is. Say what you want. Do you want a refund, replacement? Would you be okay with a repair? Sometimes the products, like if it's so bad it can't be repaired, you deserve a refund.
Whose
If
call is that? Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but whose call is that? Can I, as a consumer, say I definitely just want a refund, or can a retailer say no, we only do repairs on that one?
so it comes down to this technicality in the law about whether the failure is minor or major. So minor, there isn't really specific guidance on this. Choice has actually been pushing for more guidance on how the consumer guarantees should apply because it's so tough to navigate. But minor is it something that can be easily fixed? A button's fallen off a shirt, can they sew it back on? Is a classic example that's given. If it's a major thing, it's something that if you knew about it before you purchased it, you wouldn't have bought it. If you knew this fan would not keep you cool, you wouldn't have bought it. And in those cases, you can ask for a refund or a replacement.
So Choice has been handing out the Shonkies for many years, and there's a few different categories. Who else has covered themselves in glory this year?
Look, we've got a great, great batch of Shonkies this year. We've got a buy now, pay later product that lends up to $30,000 to people. It's but it doesn't comply with the credit law. It doesn't do safe lending checks, and it actually has such high fees that when we looked at it, in some cases, you're better off putting costs on your high interest credit card than using this product.
Youch.
That's
Yeah.
not a good look, is it?
No, it is not. Look at the other standouts. The airline customer advocate. It's an advocate that doesn't advocate. Advocate that doesn't advocate. It will take your complaints about airline issues, but all it really does is forward your emails on to the airlines. That's it. Can't make a decision. Can't help you any further.
That sounds like a lot of the ombudsmans, to be honest, from what I hear from people.
Look, the airline customer advocate differs in that it doesn't have the ability to make a decision. It doesn't have any
Oh,
power
okay.
to stand independently from those airlines. It literally can only forward your email on. That is its one power. And we think, particularly in the 2020, 2021 world where we're all dealing with vouchers and flight cancellations, Australians deserve better. And the last two, we've got, have you heard of the food cycler? The Breville food cycler?
Is
No.
this
Do I
some kind
want
of
to?
exercise bike that feeds you carrots?
That would be more useful potentially. This is a $2,000 compost bin, essentially. It's a product that's designed to reduce your food print, but basically it's a big expensive machine. It costs about $500 to buy, but then when you take into account electricity use and part replacement, parts that go into landfill, it costs about $2,000 to use over a 5-year period. And all it does is compost. You can do that essentially for free in a lot of different ways. So that's our recommendation. Get an ice cream bin.
A $1 bucket can do that. I mean,
Yes.
And even better, this thing makes this whirring, high-pitched noise. It was so bad that our testers had to put it in another room because they could not stand being in the same room as this thing. It does composting worse.
wow.
And what was the final Shonky?
Our last one, look, we've often traditionally called out products for saying one thing and delivering another, and this is a really good example. It's a Kittylicious strawberry fruit wriggles. Um, they pretend to be this product that's designed for toddlers, full of natural fruit, really healthy. It's got nearly 70% sugar. In fact, it has more sugar than snakes alive, like the lollies, the snake
Wow.
lollies. Do not
We
feed
should
your
get some for
toddlers to
Jen
snakes.
Dudley Nicholson.
So So when I'm having a rough day after like a 3 a.m. tech
Yeah.
conference start, I just need a bag of these things now,
Yeah,
right?
you need fruit wriggles. Although it is so expensive. We did the unit pricing cost. It's about $150 a kilo. You
How does that?
get the Allen's love.
Wow,
You could get some Coke for that.
I was going exactly. I think I'll find a cocaine dealer nearby. That might be cheaper.
Yeah, yeah, you can pay less and still get an energy boost.
Well, that sounds both frightening in terms of the products that are out there, but awesome in that choice is chasing them up. Thanks so much for your time, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
And now is the time, of course, for you to face the classic vertical hold 3 questions of doom. I think you've been here before, but I think at least one of the questions has changed. In any order you'd care to tackle them, where can people find your work? Where can they find you on social media? And our current big contentious question of the moment, what's the best Australian bird?
Oh, magpie. Any bird that threatens others, I'm there. You can find me at Erin L. Turner on Twitter and check out everything at choice.com.au.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
So, a couple of weeks on the show when we were discussing Facebook's purported name change, I suggested that they should be Marky Z's House of Horrors because it was descriptive and it was accurate, but it's not the way the company went. The company
They
that
didn't go with
owns
Zuck Buddy either. I don't understand
didn't.
Zuck Buddies. That's
They
a
totally
Tinder
didn't.
killer right there.
They totally didn't. The company that owns Facebook, but not Facebook, the social network service itself, is going to be called Meta. Gus, what's Meta about Meta?
Nothing's very meta about Meta. It's a really bland, stupid name, which is what they wanted. I think they didn't want anything that was really kind of get in there. My favorite joke that I've seen about it is that it's called Meta because all these companies, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or anything else, actually want your metadata. That's what they're interested in. So they're basically just
Nice.
advertising that there. What they have said, I mean, the reasoning behind calling it Meta as opposed to going with any of these other fine suggestions is that there was a lot of talk about the metaverse, this idea that there's going to be some kind of new virtual reality in which all these technology will play a major role, and Facebook really wants people to talk about the metaverse a lot. Now, as far as we can tell, the metaverse is basically just a bad reboot of Second Life. Like, it doesn't really seem like anything else much from that, but that is the idea that they're really going with.
But hang on, didn't we already have Second Life? I mean, wasn't that already a bit of a disaster in its own way and one of those things that just fizzled out?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think this notion of trying to create virtual reality spaces really isn't new. Even the label of calling it the metaverse isn't entirely new. And I think what we've learned is that it's one of these ideas that sounds really good until you actually try and do anything with it. And then it turns out to be a bit of a damn squib.
But isn't one of the big things we've learnt since Second Life how bad these kind of online things can become? Look at the cesspool that Facebook has become, and it's its own fault because it's the way Facebook polices it. Why would you trust them to police the metaverse any better? And therefore, isn't the metaverse going to turn into another scum of hive and villainy?
Well, you'd think that would be a reasonable expectation.
Yes.
That is what we've seen happen in all these other kinds of things. And that might be a desirable business outcome, though. I guess we'll have to wait
For
and
them,
see.
yes. But why would anyone want to go there? And then if nobody wants to go there, why would anybody want to advertise there? And then doesn't the whole thing fall apart?
It's certainly open to question. Like, it does feel like, when there's no real concrete demonstration of it, it really did feel like a big look over there moment. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, no, we're calling ourselves meta because we're doing all these amazing stuff, and we're not horrible and shonky, and we're not letting people scrape your data, and we're not ruining politics all around the world. No, it wasn't us.
It doesn't help though when their demo, or what Zuckerberg was talking about, the potential applications was like checking your email while you're talking to someone. If I'm talking to someone, I don't necessarily want them checking my email. But let's face it, that already happens with smartphones. I don't need a new Oculus headset and a metaverse to do that.
Yeah, we can
Absolutely
be
not.
rude in the real world. We don't need to be rude. We don't need a new place to be rude in. Thank you.
One of the other weird things with this that's emerged is that at least in one instance, and I suspect it won't be the only one, because as you say, Gus, the metaverse, Meta has existed as a concept. There's at least one US trademark out there for this, and the company that actually has it they're in Arizona, and they've actually said, "Oh look, yeah, they can't have it unless they give us $20 million."
So,
20 million. You're selling yourself short, aren't you? I
Yeah.
think you left a couple
That-
of zeros off that.
That's some serious lowballing because, like, you
Yeah.
just feel like they're just going to pay. I mean, we know that tech companies have a long history of we'll just announce it and then, worry about the details later. I mean,
Cough, iPhone, cough.
yeah, that was literally what I was thinking of. That was the one that kind of came to mind. So you'd think, yes, we can just afford to quietly do that. As an aging tech journalist, I keep thinking of used to be an analyst firm called the Meta Group who got bought out by Gartner eventually, I think. But it's like, yeah, that was my immediate source of confusion. But I think, yeah, that's very relatable for like the three of us. But probably most people are not having that thought.
I did see some other vendors, and I can't remember who it was, talking about the metaverse concept as well. So I'm wondering if metaverse, rather than being metaverse with a capital M as in Facebook's metaverse is just going to be the next generic term we use, like cyberspace, to describe that kind of environment.
The information super meta way.
Yes,
Yeah.
basically.
So the metaverse is basically Web 2.0 to remind us of even more failure labels that
Yeah.
people have tried to apply to things.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the challenge there for them becomes that stupid, Kleenex trademark thing of if everyone just refers to it that way, it becomes a generic term and they lose any of their brand value. But I suppose it's important to point out this is still the holding company. They're still going to have Facebook, presumably Facebook in the metaverse, and Oculus Rift in the metaverse, and Instagram in the metaverse, which will be particularly unpleasant if it's people's photos suddenly in 3D with avatars or something.
It's all going to be very, very unpleasant. I think we can be confident of that.
And well, speaking of photos, the other thing that Facebook announced this week is that it's actually going to delete a whole bunch of data. And you mentioned before, Facebook just kind of loves hoovering up our data, but it's going to delete a whole bunch of facial recognition data. Why?
Facial recognition has always been hugely controversial because effectively, if Facebook scrapes all that data, it's actually biometric information, it's personal information, and it basically starts doing it without really, checking, giving you much access to it, or seeking your permission explicitly in some cases. So it has always been controversial to have these kind of systems there. And Facebook saying we're going to stop it, they're one of several companies that have done that. IBM has had similar software that they stopped using. Microsoft has stopped doing that. It's just proved to be really controversial. In fact, it came up in Australia this week. There's a company called Clearview that sells facial recognition systems that are like used by law enforcement, and they got busted by the Information Commissioner for basically saying you scraped all this stuff without checking. And they tried that fun, novel thing of saying, "Oh, we're in America, Australian law doesn't apply to us." To which the Information Commissioner said, "Wrong, loud and clear." And so I think Facebook could sense that this is the mood amongst regulators. They're like, and Facebook doesn't like being regulated. And in this case, I think it decided the commercial benefits of having that technology weren't worth the risk of basically likely getting busted down the track. So in the spirit of trying to look nice, that's why it's just kind of going, okay, we are going to, basically we're going to stop doing this. You're no longer going to have the facial recognition, which for people who use Facebook means that this option that we used to say, hey, we'll automatically identify the people in your photos, that's not going to happen anymore.
Are they stop using it behind the scenes though, or are they just going to stop using it in a public facing way like that?
So what they've actually said, and they put a lot of spin on this around that whole kind of automatic tagging thing and how there are, and I'll be fair, this is true. There are some applications for people with visual difficulties and so on where that kind of tagging is actually genuinely useful. But what they've basically said is all the data they've got, which represents, from their claim, more than a third of their daily users who'd opted into this, all of the data they've got with that, they're going to junk. They're going to delete more than 1 billion people's individual facial recognition templates. Isn't that a lovely term? Doesn't give you Big Brother chills at all. What they haven't said is perhaps as revealing because, of course, everything they've learned about facial recognition, all the background algorithm stuff they've still got, and they have said that they're going to potentially continue research in the future. But as Gus said, I think there's also this big regulatory question, and they're basically kind of stepping back for the moment to say, yeah, look, maybe not. It wouldn't shock me if there was a hard drive in Facebook Research Labs somewhere which still had all this stuff on. It's not like Zuckerberg's wandering around with a big electromagnet going, no, it all must die.
Well, he is, but that's for something else. Yeah, and we're very reminded that it came out, in the sort of the Facebook papers, all the recent scandal, that like things that they say they're going to stop, they're going to try and do better, they often quietly kind of shift on. So they were like, oh, we'll try and stop election misinformation right up until after the election's over, and then we're just going to get rid of that team. So in the same way, I think, we can expect that some version of this is going to reappear in some form down the track.
So are they pulling out all the stops at the moment just to come up with everything they can to try and clean up their image? Because the Facebook papers and everything else, they're just in so much trouble. It's like, okay, quick, what have we got to distract people?
They are. There's definitely some distraction going on, and there's some weird stuff. Like the big headline this week was around all the face recognition stuff. But the most bizarre thing that they announced during the week was that they're now starting to manufacture their own skin. This is like,
Yeah. This
So
is
they've got
just
skin
right
in
out
the
there.
game.
they've got skin in the game. Skin is the
totally.
game.
Zuckerberg is making fake skin, and we're not talking about skin in the game here. We are talking about skin so that robots can feel.
It rubs on the lotion, that kind of.
It rubs the lotion on its diodes, or
Yes.
it gets the voltage again. Yes.
He couldn't sound anything more like a Bond villain at this
No.
point.
Sitting there stroking a cat in a spinning chair. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the robot will be stroking the cat using this fantastic new sort of. And I mean, it sounds like a technically interesting thing. This way they've come up with, where you can potentially give robots sort of greater sensitivity. So it's kind of fun in that robot way. But ultimately, whenever we think about robots, we know that they're all going to eventually take over and kill us. And now it turns out that they'll be able to feel the blood trickling down our face when that happens.
I look forward to this future and wish to remind our new robot overlords that as a trusted journalist, no, wait, I shouldn't go down that line. It's been done before. But you're right. The technology is fascinating, actually, because it's magnetic skin, and the whole idea is that there's lots of computer vision, there's lots of computer sound, there's not so much stuff that deals with computer touch, and potentially this has, outside of the creepy Facebook metaverse, this has some real world applications for amputees, for example. If you can build a prosthetic limb that can actually present a sensation of touch that's stronger than what we already do, isn't that a good thing?
Yeah,
Yes,
but is that what it will be used for, or is it just for virtual sex in the metaverse?
I think
Is
we
this
all know the answer to that,
Yes,
Adam.
it's a new GIMP suit.
And that's an entirely different kind of Facebook sticky content.
Yes. So, Gus, Telstra has finally come to the party with its home and business 5G services, a so-called NBN killer, depending on who you believe and what you read. They're not first to market, but what have they got to offer, and is it worth getting excited about?
Oh, I'm going to answer it's not that exciting, honestly. It's interesting. We've been expecting this from Telstra, that they would get into this. As you say, Optus did this super early with their 5G. They got in there and they've had plans out there for a little while. Telstra is taking a very cautious approach. So it's only going to be available in selected suburbs. They have said they will cap the number of users in each suburb, which is smart, but not given how long have we been talking about the thing about 5G is this will be great even if we've got a stadium full of people, but apparently not a suburb full of people. Apparently that's not quite as manageable.
Yeah.
It turns out 5G doesn't go through walls. I've only been saying this for some time now.
So you've got to do this, and I have to say, I went to check the availability. Their availability checker is one of the worst pieces of technology I've ever seen from Telstra, and that's really saying something.
That's a big
they've
call.
had some absolute, like, half the time it doesn't work, and then when it does work, it says, "Oh, we can't check right now." I still don't know whether it's available anywhere in Sydney because I could not get the address checker to work once. So I think it's not a great start for it. The second thing that I think, the pricing is absolutely parallel to Optus, but unusually, and this is the one which I do think really means it's not an NBN killer. While Optus went with unlimited for its home 5G, Telstra has a 1 terabyte limit. There is actually a monthly download limit, which I think is a brave move in these, data-heavy times.
Realistically, your average person's not going to use more than a terabyte, though, unless you're really into Linux distros.
Well, aren't we all?
Yeah.
Look, I think it's more perceptual. I think you're right. Probably most people aren't going to go through that, but I do wonder, whether some people go, "Oh, hang on, why am I going to go with this?" So I guess if you really don't want the NBN, or if you're someone who's moving around a lot, you might settle for that. It's not like you've got a lot of other good alternatives, but I guess you would be going, well, hang on. If I'm weighing up Optus unlimited and Telstra with a limit, it's not necessary. It's a way of differentiating them.
But Telstra classically did this back with cable HFC. Telstra plans were, by and large, for the longest time, data limited, at a point where Optus was unlimited. Now, admittedly, the
Oh,
Optus cable
the
network was
rolling
held together.
caps.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
exactly. The
Flashbacks.
the
So
Optus
bad.
network was held together with bits of string
Iffy
and
tape.
mouse dung, but
Which we told them before they bought it, but they
And can we
wouldn't
be
listen
clear?
to us.
You're saying was, it still is. I don't
Yeah.
think anything's changed on that front.
this is true. The big thing that struck me though was this interesting comparison point with what Telstra charges for the NBN. Because it's NBN 25 plans, which in theory would be slower than what they're claiming for these 5G plans, but there's a big caveat there, which I might get to in a minute, is like $80. It's NBN 50's $95, I think. So $10 more than this theoretically much faster home 5G plan. It's not a great look for the NBN, is it?
Well, no. I mean, yeah, so it's kind of going, okay, yeah, we think we can give you something a little bit cheaper, but it is very, very restricted in terms of its rollout. Like, clearly they are. Yeah, we've talked before about the fact that, 5G is kind of available in, sort of postage stamp sized areas around the place. It's not going to be a big alternative, but it definitely suggests that they feel like, okay, we can charge lower prices when we run the network. That's what everyone's been saying. That's why, there's a little bit of strategy there, possibly. They're saying, hey, we can do this. We're kind of proving that we can do this. Hey, NBN, do you want to come up with some better wholesale pricing? That'd be swell. So there could be an element of that here for sure.
But the big question is here, what speeds are they talking about? And more importantly than what are the maximum speeds, what are the minimum speeds they're talking about? What is their minimum speed guarantee, if anything?
What's your typical evening speed, you might say?
Yes. Alex, can you shed any light on that?
So it's a little bit hard to discern. What they actually advertise is an average download speed of 378 megabit, which sounds great. You're at general NBN for a lot of people tops out at 100, unless you are in that smaller fiber to the premise or some HFC footprint. But they say their typical speed range is 50 to 600. So there's some wriggle room there. I guess the other point of comparison, though, against an NBN plan is Telstra, as an NBN ISP, has for quite some time now been claiming a 100% saturation rate on NBN plans. So if you're on an NBN 100 plan, they say our typical NBN 100 evening speed is 100.
100, yeah.
So that's kind of an Australian consumer law, I'm sure, would jump in if you weren't getting that. That's a fairly solid fixed guarantee. This is the big thing with 5G. You've got that massive variability because it's wireless, especially for any kind of latency involved task. This is where 5G should be great, of course. The latency is meant to be a lot lower, but it might not be, and that could impact you everything from video conferencing to video gaming.
So, I'd actually be asking them the very hard questions about what is your guaranteed minimum speed? At what point can I go and complain to the TIO or the ACCC or whoever that you're not actually delivering what you're supposed to deliver?
Part of the challenge there, though, is the model they've gone for with this single plan is basically buy the modem and you're on a month-to-month rolling contract. You're not stuck with them. So I think if you get ticked off, what you might get out of them from a complaint is, okay, here's your last month's service fee refunded because we weren't giving you what we promised we would. Now bugger off.
Sounds very familiar from many other telcos. So I also noticed they're very in all their notes, as well as kind of stressing, hey, we won't let everyone in the suburb have it. They're super clear on that you can only use it at home, to the point of basically suggesting that it's kind of tied to that location and that if you actually moved it round, it wouldn't work. And I can understand why they want to do that, but it also makes me worry about whether that's going to wreck the performance if you're trying to sit at one end of the house and the router's at the other. I definitely think it's going to be interesting to actually try it out and see how well the hardware performs in practice.
Well, there is a really interesting point of comparison there too, because of course you could go out right now. You would not need to be in one of their selected suburbs and get a Telstra 5G SIM and chuck it in a hotspot, chuck it in a phone, share it that way. But at that point, their $85 a month for a terabyte of data sounds like a bargain, because $85 on a Telstra 5G plan does technically get you unlimited data, but it's 120 gig of data, at which point you crash back down to 1.5 megabits per second, which is basically enough to tell you that your connection isn't stable enough to do just about anything.
So yes, and you do wonder how that's going to play out, because companies are determined to hold on to that ability to charge for data in mobile. They lost that battle with broadband. You have to go unlimited. They seem very reluctant to enter into that space. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, that static sound just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Gus for joining us this week.
My pleasure.
You've been on the show many times. You know what's just about to hit you, sort of. The Vertical Hold 3 Questions of Doom. However, because you've been on so many times, I have to hit you with a special Gus-centric question. So, in any order you like, where can people find your work online? Where can they find your social media online? And your personal big contentious question, best classic and modern series, who lead actors?
Oh, challenging. So people can find my work at finder.com.au. They can find me on Twitter at GusWorldAU. In terms of classic Who, then I'm going to have to go, obviously, with... It's always a tough one, but I will go with Fifth Doctor Peter Davison. That's always ultimately where my heart lands up. Ooh, fun and contentious when we get into modern Who. You know what? I think I'm going to lean into current. I'm going to lean into Jodie Whittaker. So...
Nice.
I know you guys pretty well because my guess was actually going to be best Doctor Who villain. That's what I thought. I had no idea what you were going to say, so I was pretty close.
Very, so close. I would have also obviously accepted Patrick Troughton and Christopher Eccleston as the correct answers because those are the correct answers. But we can agree to disagree a little bit later. And also, thanks to Aaron. And as always, you can catch us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, or via the Vertical Hold Facebook/Meta page, or on the web at verticalhold.com.au.
And just a reminder for regular listeners, we're thrilled to have Aussie Broadband as our sponsor, and they've given us a special promo code which gives new customers a $10 per month discount for 6 months when signing up online for an unlimited plan between NBN 50 and NBN 100. The promo code is vertical, so hopefully that'll come in handy for Australian listeners shopping around for a great broadband service. And once again, thanks for dropping by, everybody. Don't forget to tell your friends about us and leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice. It really does help us reach new people and spread the good word. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.